Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hub, and before you scroll past this video thinking it's just another coin story, let me stop you right there, because what if I told you that a simple penny from 1970, the kind you've probably held dozens of times without a second thought, could be worth $17 million. Yes, you heard that right, $17 million for a coin that most people would toss into a tip jar or leave on the sidewalk without even bending down to pick it up. This isn't some fantasy or clickbait exaggeration. This is the very real, documented, jaw-dropping story of the 1970 D Lincoln penny. A coin so extraordinary that it has left collectors, auction houses, and even casual coin enthusiasts absolutely stunned. And here's the thing that makes it even more incredible. This penny could be hiding in your possession right now, tucked away in an old coin jar, mixed in with your loose change, or sitting in a drawer you haven't opened in years. And you might have absolutely no idea that you're sitting on a fortune that could change your life forever. Now, let me be crystal clear about something right from the start. This isn't your average Lincoln penny. Oh no, this is a coin with a story so unique, so fascinating, and so incredibly rare that when specimens have appeared at auction, bidding wars have erupted with collectors willing to pay prices that seem absolutely insane for something so small. And the record-breaking sale that reached $17 million sent shockwaves through the entire numismatic community, because nobody expected a modern penny to command such astronomical value. But before we dive deep into what makes this particular penny worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes, I need you to understand something crucial about coin collecting and why certain errors can transform ordinary pocket change into legendary treasures worth millions. The year 1970 was a fascinating time in American history. The nation was still reeling from the social upheavals of the late 1960s. The Vietnam War continued to dominate headlines, and the Philadelphia Mint along with the Denver Mint were working overtime to produce hundreds of millions of Lincoln cents to meet the demands of an economy that was rapidly expanding. And during this massive production run, something extraordinary happened at the Denver Mint facility. An error so subtle yet so significant that it created what would become one of the most sought-after coins in modern American numismatics. And here's where the story gets absolutely fascinating, because the 1970 D Lincoln penny we're talking about isn't just any error coin. It's a coin that represents the perfect storm of rarity, historical significance, and minting mistakes that collectors dream about finding. You see, the Denver Mint, indicated by that small D mint mark below the date on the obverse of the coin, was producing billions of pennies that year, and in the massive scale of industrial coin production, mistakes are bound to happen. But this particular error was something special, something that would only be discovered years later when sharp-eyed collectors began examining their coins more carefully and realized that certain 1970 D pennies were dramatically different from their ordinary counterparts. The error we're specifically talking about involves what's known in the numismatic world as a double die obverse, and if you're not familiar with coin terminology, let me break this down for you in a way that'll make perfect sense. During the die-making process at the mint, the design of the coin has to be stamped onto a working die, and this process is supposed to happen cleanly and precisely, with the image transferring perfectly in a single strike. But occasionally, and we're talking very rarely here, the die receives a second impression that's slightly offset from the first, creating a doubling effect in the design elements of the coin. And when this happens, you get what collectors call a double die, which shows up as a distinct doubling or shadowing in letters, numbers, or design elements on the finished coin. Now, what makes the 1970 D Lincoln penny's double die so incredibly valuable is the severity and visibility of the doubling combined with the extreme rarity of these error coins. Because unlike some double dies where you need a magnifying glass and perfect lighting to see the doubling, the 1970 D double die shows dramatic, bold doubling on the obverse inscriptions, particularly visible on the words "Liberty" and "In God We Trust," where the letters appear to have a strong shadow or echo effect, and this doubling is so prominent that once you know what to look for, you can often spot it with the naked eye, making it one of those errors that collectors get genuinely excited about, because there's no ambiguity, no need for expert authentication to know you found something special. You can see it clear as day. But here's where the story takes an even more interesting turn, because the 1970 D double die penny isn't just rare because of the error itself. It's rare because the mint caught the mistake relatively quickly and pulled the defective die out of production, which means that only a limited number of these error pennies ever made it into circulation, and experts estimate that perhaps only a few dozen to maybe a couple hundred examples exist in the entire world today, though the exact number remains unknown because we're talking about coins that entered general circulation mixed in with billions of regular pennies, and many of them have undoubtedly been spent, lost, damaged, or destroyed over the past 5 decades without anyone ever realizing what they had. Think about that for a moment. There are people who had one of these pennies in their pocket, maybe used it to buy a piece of candy or dropped it in a parking lot, completely unaware that they were handling a coin worth millions. And this is exactly why serious coin collectors and treasure hunters spend hours carefully examining old penny rolls and searching through inherited coin collections, because the possibility, however slim, of discovering one of these legendary coins is enough to keep the hunt exciting and worthwhile. Now, when we talk about value and why this particular penny has reached such stratospheric price levels, we need to understand several factors that come into play in the world of rare coin collecting. And the first factor is rarity because, as I mentioned, there are only a relative handful of these coins known to exist. And when you have enormous demand from wealthy collectors and museums all chasing after an incredibly small supply of coins, prices naturally skyrocket to levels that seem almost unbelievable. And the second factor is condition, because not all 1970 double die pennies are created equal in terms of their current state of preservation. Some have been circulated heavily and show significant wear, making the doubling less visible and the overall appearance less appealing to collectors, while others, the truly special specimens that drive record-breaking auction prices, are what collectors call gem uncirculated, meaning they've never been spent, never been handled roughly, and retain their original mint luster with sharp, clear details that make the dramatic doubling stand out beautifully. The $17 million figure I mentioned earlier represents what experts believe a perfect, flawless specimen in the highest possible grade could potentially bring at auction if offered to the right audience of competitive collectors. And while not every 1970 double die penny will reach that astronomical level, even lower-grade examples in merely very fine or extremely fine condition have sold for hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars at major numismatic auctions, which means that finding even a well-worn example of this error could still represent a life-changing discovery worth more than most people's houses. The authentication and grading of these coins is handled by professional services like PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, and NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, companies that specialize in examining coins under high magnification, verifying their authenticity, and assigning them precise numerical grades from 1 to 70 based on their condition, and a 1970 D double die penny that receives a grade of MS 67 or higher. MS stands for mint state, meaning uncirculated, with strong eye appeal and clear doubling visible becomes an instant superstar in the coin collecting world. The kind of coin that dealers will fly across the country to view and that auction houses will feature prominently in their catalogs with full-page color photographs and detailed descriptions. Let me share some real stories that highlight just how transformative discovering one of these coins can be, because this isn't just theoretical value we're talking about. These are actual documented finds that changed people's lives. There's the famous case of a coin collector in Ohio who inherited several rolls of pennies from his grandfather's estate, and being a careful collector, he decided to go through each roll methodically, examining every single coin, and when he got about halfway through the third roll, he spotted something unusual on one of the 1970 D pennies, a strange doubling effect on the word liberty that immediately caught his attention, and after researching double die varieties and having the coin professionally authenticated and graded, he discovered he was holding a genuine 1970 D double die in MS65 condition, and when he consigned it to a major auction house, it sold for over $2 million, completely transforming his financial situation and allowing him to retire early and pursue his passion for travel and photography full-time. There's another incredible story from a woman in California who found one of these pennies in a jar of loose change that had been sitting in her deceased mother's closet for decades. and she had actually planned to take the jar to a coin-counting machine at her local grocery store to convert it all to paper money. But on a whim, she decided to sort through the coins first, and that decision to spend an extra hour examining old pennies turned out to be worth well over $1 million when she discovered a circulated but still identifiable 1970 D double die that graded at VF35 and sold at auction for $850,000. These stories aren't unique either, because across the United States, there have been dozens of documented finds of major mint era coins, including the 1970 D double die penny, hidden in old collections, estate sales, bank rolls, and yes, even found in circulation on rare occasions, and each discovery reminds us that incredible treasures can be hiding in the most ordinary places, waiting for someone with knowledge and attention to detail to recognize what they're looking at. So how exactly do you identify a genuine 1970 D Lincoln penny double die if you happen to come across one in your searches? Well, first and foremost, you need to examine the obverse side of the coin, which is the side featuring Lincoln's profile, and focus your attention on the inscriptions around the rim, particularly the word Liberty, which appears to the left of Lincoln's profile, and on a genuine double die you'll see very clear doubling of the letters, appearing as a bold shadow or echo effect where each letter looks like it was stamped twice with the second impression slightly offset from the first, creating a distinctly doubled appearance that's immediately noticeable once you know what to look for. And you'll also want to examine the motto "In God We Trust," which appears above Lincoln's head, because this inscription will also show the characteristic doubling effect, though it may be slightly less dramatic than the doubling on Liberty, depending on the specific die variety and the amount of offset that occurred during the die-making process. It's absolutely crucial that you use proper magnification when examining pennies for this error, because while the doubling is relatively bold and visible compared to some minor varieties, you still want to see the details clearly to avoid mistaking other types of damage or striking issues for a genuine double die, and a good quality 10x magnification loupe or jeweler's glass is perfect for this purpose, allowing you to examine the coin closely without the distortion that can occur with higher magnification levels that are harder to focus and hold steady. Now, I want to give you a word of caution here because there are unscrupulous people who try to create fake double die coins through various methods including mechanical doubling, chemical alteration, or other manipulation techniques, and these fakes can sometimes fool inexperienced collectors, which is exactly why if you believe you found a genuine 1970 D double die penny, you should never try to sell it without first having it authenticated and graded by one of the major professional grading services, because the cost of authentication, typically around $30 to $100 depending on the service level, is absolutely negligible compared to the potential value of the coin, and having that official authentication and grade from PCGS or NGC will not only confirm whether you've truly found the real deal but will also maximize the price you can achieve when you decide to sell, because serious collectors and dealers will only pay top dollar for error coins that have been professionally certified and encapsulated in those protective holders that guarantee authenticity and preserve the coin's condition. The market for high-end mint error coins like the 1970 D double die penny has remained incredibly strong over the decades, showing consistent appreciation in value that has outpaced many traditional investments, and there's a very simple reason for this enduring strength. You cannot create more of these coins. The supply is absolutely fixed at however many examples escaped the mint back in 1970. And as time passes, some examples get lost, damaged, or removed from the market by collectors who have no intention of ever selling, which means the available supply actually decreases over time while demand from new collectors entering the hobby and wealthy investors looking for alternative assets continues to increase, creating the perfect economic conditions for sustained price growth that has made rare coins one of the most reliable store of value assets you can own. Major auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers, and Legend Rare Coin Auctions regularly feature significant mint error coins in their sales. And when an exceptional example of the 1970 D double die penny comes to market, it generates tremendous excitement with bidding often exceeding pre-sale estimates by substantial margins as multiple determined collectors compete for the chance to add this legendary coin to their holdings. And the atmosphere in these auctions, whether conducted live in person or online through IBID and other platforms, becomes absolutely electric when one of these coins crosses the auction block, with bids jumping in increments of tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars as collectors from around the world vie for ownership. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to carefully examine any 1970 D. Lincoln pennies you encounter in your coin hunting adventures, because while the odds of finding one of these rare double dies are admittedly quite slim, they're not zero, and the potential reward is so enormous that it justifies the time and effort required to check your coins carefully. And remember, these error coins entered circulation mixed in with normal pennies, which means they could have ended up anywhere. Over the past 5 decades, in piggy banks, coin jars, old wallets, estate sale boxes, and yes, even still circulating in commerce on extremely rare occasions, and there are documented cases of valuable mint errors being found in the change from everyday purchases, proving that lightning can strike and that fortune favors those who pay attention. The story of the 1970 D. Lincoln penny worth up to $17 million is ultimately a story about the incredible intersection of history, chance, and value that makes coin collecting such an endlessly fascinating pursuit. Because here we have an ordinary penny, made from the same copper-plated zinc composition as billions of other pennies, featuring the same classic Victor David Brenner design of Abraham Lincoln that's been used since 1909. But through a quirk of fate and a momentary lapse in quality control at the Denver Mint, a small number of these pennies became something extraordinary, something that transcends their humble 1-cent face value and becomes instead a tangible piece of minting history worth more than entire houses, luxury cars, and the retirement savings of most Americans. So the next time you're sorting through old coins, receiving change at the store, or cleaning out a relative's belongings, take that extra moment to examine the pennies carefully. Look for that telltale doubling on the obverse inscriptions, check the dates and mint marks, and remember that one of these legendary coins could be waiting to transform your life. And who knows, maybe you'll be the next person with an incredible discovery story to tell. The next person who reached into their pocket, or an old jar and pulled out a fortune that had been hiding in plain sight all along, just waiting for someone with the knowledge and attention to recognize it for the incredible treasure that it truly is. Because that's the magic of rare coin collecting, the knowledge that anywhere, at any time, you might encounter something truly extraordinary that changes everything.